In this video, I want to demonstrate three things with FitNesse, Maven, and Eclipse. First, I'm going to show you how to set up FitNesse to run in Eclipse. Second, I'm going to show you how to use Maven's classpath instead of having to specify a classpath in FitNesse's own pages. And lastly, I'm going to show you how to debug FitNesse in Eclipse. So let's get started. We start out by creating a new Maven project with from the command line, and we do that by using the archetype plugin for Maven. The archetype plugin generates the standard layout for a Maven project, including source folders and a project description. And we are going to choose the simple Maven archetype. Just call our project something that makes sense, about FitNesse demo, and put everything in the com.broadwell package, and there we go. Now that I have created the new project, I generate a Eclipse workspace for it, and that will download the necessary dependencies. And as you can see, we now have a new Eclipse project, and I import it in Eclipse just like any other project. There it is. Alright, since this project is using FitNesse, we have to add FitNesse as a dependency, and we do that in the POM, the project object model. And this is the dependency. We have to add one dependency for FitNesse and one dependency for the Fit library. And I've chosen here to use a slightly old version of FitNesse because that version is stored in the central Maven repository, so then we don't have to muck around with versions and things like that. Now this changes my project, so I have to regenerate the Eclipse project files. And we're good to go. Refresh project, and we can now see that Fit and FitNesse are added here as two reference libraries. We start FitNesse by opening the Run dialog and start a new Java application. Let's call it FitNesse. And the main class is called FitNesse.FitNesse. We press run here. We can see that it starts up at port 80 right here. So now I take a web browser and I go to localhost, and here is my new FitNesse installation. Alright, let's make a test. Calculator tests, for example. And in each test, we specify a set of example tables of the expected behavior. In this case, I want to have my own little fixture. I call it com.broadwell.calculator fixture, and let's say that we want to have a first and a second parameter, and we want to ask what is the sum and what is the product of these. So if the first argument is 1 and the second argument is 2, then the sum is 3 and the product is 2. If the first argument is 100, 1000, and the second argument is 0, then the sum is 1000 and the product is 0. That'll do for now. Normally you would have many more tests in your project. I save it. I select this to be a test, and I press the test button. But this doesn't work yet. The reason for that is that it cannot find the fit server. what actually happens when you start a FitNesse test is that FitNesse starts a new Java process with where it starts up Fit, and it has to set up the class path for that Java process correctly. One way to fix this is to go into our test and explicitly set the class path for FitNesse to use. So I would just do something like this, where I add to the path, I add FitNesse and Fit library and FitNesse under my Maven repository. Now this is a bit clunky because I have to specify my home path here, which means that this has to change for every user if we want to share this test. That's not a really good idea, and in addition, the path is fairly long, so it's clunky to use. But anyway, I get another error now. The error that I get is that it cannot find the calculator fixture. So I better create this class. So I go and I make a new class. It's called calculator fixture. And if you're familiar with FitNesse, you have probably used the column fixture a lot of times. Okay, so here's a column fixture, and it still doesn't find it. The reason for this is that I have included Fit and Fit library, but I have not included my own class path, so I have to add that as well. And I'm going to add target/classes, which is where Maven saves my generated classes. So in this case, it found the fixture, but it doesn't work correctly because I haven't implemented it yet. So the way this works is that any column that has a name that doesn't end in a question mark is supposed to be a public field in the fixture, and any column that has a method that ends with a question mark is supposed to be a public method. So I will have a public integer field called first, public integer field called second, a public integer method called product, which is first multiplied by second, and a public integer field called sum, which is first plus second. Let's try it again. And now my tests run correctly, and I get the expected result. The real problem with my current setup, however, is that I have to specify the class path both in the Eclipse test, both in the FitNesse test and in Maven. And this seems very redundant, especially if you have a lot of dependencies. So I want to find a way to avoid this. If I remove all of the path dependencies again, and then I'm going to make it pass in another way. So now it fails just as before. Alright, I said that I started FitNesse, FitNesse main class, instead of just starting it in Eclipse. Now I want to start my own FitNesse class where I override a few things. So I'm going to make my own start class. I'm going to call it run FitNesse. And this class is pretty much a copy of FitNesse own start class. So this is a slightly simplified version of the class fit.fitnesse, which I started before. The most important thing to notice about FitNesse is that it has a context that it sets up, and in the context you specify things like where the pages are located and what kind of responders to use, and this is something that we'll come back to. This is where the trick is. So I'm going to start my own Java application instead. Okay, this fails because FitNesse was already running on port 80. I'm going to stop that and start it once more. Alright, and now we're running on port 80 again. We can go here and we can look at our test again. And it's still there. And it still doesn't run. Now the interesting thing to notice here is that the URL contains this part after the question mark called test, which is a message to decide which responder to use. And this is how that works. So FitNesse has what's called a responder factory, and the responder factory has different verbs, and each verb triggers a separate class. So I want to make my own overridden version of the test responder. So I create my own class called test responder, a inherit class path test responder, and it inherits from FitNesse test responder. The interesting method to override here is build command, and in the build command method I simply want to add the current class path to the class path that FitNesse gave me. And I can do that by using the system property java.class.path. And in this case, what I do is I split up the elements of the class path and I concatenate them together. And I escape each one with quotation marks so that I will support spaces in the class path. This is not necessary for my particular setup, but if you have your class path, if you have your home directory contain spaces, which it does in many versions of Windows, it will be absolutely necessary. Okay, so now I've added a new responder, and I have to restart FitNesse again. So I'm restarting my version of FitNesse, and when I press the run button here, you can see that it works correctly because it inherited the class path from the parent class, from the parent Java process. The final thing I want to show you is how to debug your FitNesse tests in Eclipse. So let's stop FitNesse again, and let's start it under the debugger. Now, if I set a breakpoint in one of my fixture methods here, you can see that when I run my test, it still doesn't stop in the at my breakpoint, and the reason for that is that I run the parent FitNesse process under the debugger, but it starts a new process for each FitNesse test, and that process is not run under the debugger. So the way I want to do this is so that if you say debug instead of test in the URL, then I want to start the Java process in the debugger. And the way to start is the same place as with the test responder, and that is to add a new responder. So we have to call this debug, and I'm going to call my class debug test responder, just like so. Create a new class. This also inherits from test responder, and it also overloads build command. And as before, I want to set up the class path, but in addition, I want to make sure that I want to start Java in a different way. I want to execute here Java with debug options for the class path and with the program which is given as argument. In this case, it's fit.fit.server. And the debug options tells Java to run with the remote debugger and start up as a server and suspend at startup, waiting for an incoming debug client. And we have to choose a debug port. Let's do port 12,000. Alright. I stop FitNesse and I restart it, and now I should be able to execute the debug like this. And as you can see, it looks like my test is freezing and is locked off, and that is actually the case. It is locked up, waiting for a incoming debug connection. And I start the debug connection by opening the debug window and adding a new remote Java application. I have to choose my project, and I have to say, give it a name, Debug FitNesse, and the correct port, 12,000. And now I ended up right at my breakpoint in my fixture. So in this case, I can do anything that I could do in the debugger. I can look at the local variables, and I can even change the local variables. So to make the test break, I change the value of first to 100, and now the product of the result of the result of product should be something other than what I expected. And if I'm tired of resuming after each breakpoint, I can press the disconnect button and it will run until finished. If I go back here and look at the test results, you can see that the product was it expected 2 as before, but because I changed the value in the debugger, the actual value was now 200. So in this case, you can actually you can go around and change and debug your application just as you would debug any other application. So in this demo, I showed you first how to set up a Maven project to use FitNesse and how to run it. And then I showed you how you can, by changing the responder factory, how you can add the Maven class paths to FitNesse, and how you can debug your FitNesse tests. I hope it has been useful. Thank you for watching.